This podcast is made possible by the listener members of Nashville Public Radio.
This is the Nash Villager Podcast. It's February 12th, 2026. On this day in 1970, Joseph Searles III became the first black member of the New York Stock Exchange with full access to the trading floor. That was less than 60 years ago. Now, it wasn't Searles' first experience at breaking through the color line. As a teenager, he was in the first class of black students to integrate his Texas high school. After playing college and pro football, he transitioned into a finance career and organized the nation's first ever minority franchising fair. That was in 1969 and was probably one of the actions that made him the guy of choice for integrating the stock exchange floor. Searles also became one of the nation's leading experts in the money side of urban housing issues, serving important policy roles on both state and federal levels. But again, 1970 wasn't that long ago, not on the greater scheme of things. Searles seems to have been a brilliant guy. But how many other brilliant black folks were kept off the floor before he made it there? I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with historical context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. I don't think it's a coincidence that the first black man deemed ready to trade on the floor of the stock exchange was also one of the first to get an integrated education. The smartest, most capable, and clever person can only go as far as their learning will allow. And separate but equal education was always separate, but rarely anything resembling equal. That said, there are a handful of truly remarkable people who managed to be Black history firsts using knowledge and training that they managed to find and attain for themselves against all odds. And one of those people was a mid-state native, Georgia Patton Washington. She was the first black woman to be licensed as a surgeon and physician in Tennessee in an era when it was rare for women of any color, or black people of any gender, to practice medicine. Thankfully for us, the same year she became a doctor, she wrote a brief autobiographical account of her life for a publication called Liberia, so we do know how she managed to achieve that goal. Washington was born in Grundy County in the last full year of the Civil War. From age 2, she was raised a few miles away over the Coffee County line. Her parents had been enslaved agricultural workers. Her father died before she was born. Her twin sister died at birth. And as you might expect for a black girl in rural Tennessee at that time, her childhood didn't offer much in the way of opportunity. She learned how to plow as soon as she was tall enough. She went to school when she could, but it was only offered a few weeks at a time here and there. Altogether, she counted up only 26 months of schooling available to her from age 9 to 17. That's only about 3 months of class time each year. Meanwhile, when school wasn't in session, she was working the fields. When Washington was 16, her mother died. She was able to move in with an older sister who must have lived here in Nashville. I say must have because she says it was after moving in with her sister that she was able to enroll at Central Tennessee College. That was a Methodist school that opened just south of downtown in 1865. It offered several types of professional training to black students. Now again, Washington had to get an education in short spurts. This time around, it was because she needed to pay tuition. She says she'd go to college for a few months, then take a teaching job somewhere to earn the money needed to go back to college and take another term's worth of classes. And one thing I've heard over and over again in recent years as the state has worked to up our college graduation rates is that people who drop out to save up more money to continue their schooling often never come back to class. That's why it's been such a priority to make community college free to the state's high school graduates or to keep the lottery-funded Hope Scholarship program going. If it's so hard to stay in school amid financial pressures now, when there are options like online classes and flexible schedules, imagine how hard it must have been for Georgia Washington back in the 1880s. And yet, time after time, she went out into the community, taught school for a little while, and then came back to Central Tennessee to keep plugging away at her own degree. Or rather, her degrees, plural. It took her 5 years to finish what was then called the Junior Normal course, which was a kind of teacher training. Then another 3 years for her Senior Normal course. And that's when she made the big leap into a part of Central that later broke off to become Meharry Medical College. Washington completed a 3-year course in medicine, evidently by that time able to focus entirely on her studies because she finished that degree on time in 1893. She was 29 years old. It had been a long, hard-fought journey to get her education. It had taken 11 years on and off to work through the courses at Central. But she did it, and she was the very first to cross that finish line. Georgia Patton Washington took that degree and became a medical missionary to Liberia, caring for patients who had escaped slavery in the U.S. by moving to Africa, and for their children and grandchildren. That autobiographical account that was published was essentially her letter of introduction to the community there. She said she looked forward to both practicing medicine and teaching school in that country, with hopes of returning to the U.S. at some point for a postgraduate degree and then coming back again to Liberia. Those were her plans. And according to other accounts, she did tremendous work in Liberia for about 2 years, pioneering new kinds of treatments. But when she did return to the U.S., it ended up being to stay. She started a clinic in Memphis, which is where she became the first Black woman to practice medicine in the state. She married, she had a child, and she kept seeing patients. Unfortunately, that line of work put her in contact with deadly communicable diseases, and so Washington ended up contracting tuberculosis and dying when she was only 36 years old. In just a few minutes, the fight over the size of Metro Council goes before the state Supreme Court. That's coming up after the newscast.
You know how important WPLN News has been to you and your family, and you have seen how high-quality local journalism is necessary to a thriving community. You can ensure that this service stays strong and stays available to all of Nashville and Middle Tennessee. Join the Producers Circle with your gift of $100 or more each month and make the bold statement that you support the mission of a more informed and engaged community. Start your philanthropic journey with Nashville Public Radio today at WPLN.org.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. Today is the last day to apply for financial support through the Davidson County Emergency Winter Housing Assistance Program. Operated by the Metro Action Commission, the program provides up to $2,000 worth of support to Nashvillians who faced hardships during Winter Storm Fern. These hardships can include things like property damage, loss of work hours, hotel expenses, or illness. There is an income limit for a single-person household. You cannot make more than $64,300. That number is higher for larger families. To apply, residents must attend an appointment and have a government-issued ID, Social Security card, proof of income, proof of lease or mortgage, and documentation for costs incurred during the storm. As of yesterday afternoon, officials had received 1,300 applications. You can find out more about how to apply on the Metro Action Commission's website. Numerous parks in Middle Tennessee remain closed due to the extensive damage to trees from Winter Storm Fern. Metro Parks and Recreation officials say some 6,000 trees are down throughout Nashville's park system, and the Tennessean reports that's not counting some in densely forested areas. More than 100 Metro Parks employees, including 9 tree crews, are working on cleanup. The closures include Edwin Warner and Percy Warner Parks, the Harpeth River and Richland Greenways, Sevier Park, and Radnor Lake State Park. It may be months before the Warner Park's trails and roads are clear of debris. State officials hope to reopen Radnor Lake by mid-March. Coffee County students won't have class again until Tuesday. That's because the district closed all its schools amid a surge of the flu. The administration posted on Facebook, quote, "We have seen an increase in flu-like symptoms across our community. Out of an abundance of caution, we believe it's important to provide time for students and staff to rest and recover and to help reduce the spread of illness." Influenza infections are on the rise across the state. It's listed as very high on a national map reported by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. There are a few ways to track virus spread and measure how bad it is. Public agencies like the State Health Department often publish the percentage of professional flu tests that are positive. In mid-January, it was 1 in 20 tests in Tennessee. In the most recent state report, it was 1 in 4. Transmission appears to be the worst in Shelby County, based on what doctors' offices are seeing. About 1 in 10 patients there are coming in for flu-like symptoms, according to federal data. The next highest are the Jackson-Madison County area and the state's northeast region. The Tennessee Valley Authority's Board of Directors has voted to amend its strategic plan to cut renewable energy and boost coal-fired power production. The Appalachia Mid-South Newsroom's Pierce Gentry has more.
TVA's shift follows a months-long effort by President Donald Trump to push the nation's largest public utility back towards fossil fuels. He fired multiple board members last year and installed new ones, who he hopes will scrap TVA's renewable energy projects and diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. The new board voted unanimously to strip renewable energy generation from its resource plan and reverse course on closing its coal power plants in Kingston and Cumberland City, Tennessee. During the meeting in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, TVA Vice President Tom Rice heaped praise onto the Trump administration.
Without whom we would not be in the position today to recommend continuing to operate over 3,000 megawatts of beautiful, clean coal that will directly support energy resiliency, reliability, and low-cost power for the 10 million people we serve.
Activists have condemned the change as harmful to the environment, accusing TVA of rushing its decision without public input. For the Appalachia Mid-South Newsroom, I'm Pierce Gentry in Knoxville, Tennessee.
The founders of the Uncle Nearest Whiskey Company are disputing claims in court that the business is in such bad financial shape it should be sold, and they want a judge to give control back to them. In recent months, Uncle Nearest has been in receivership while an outside attorney gets a grip on its finances. That's after it defaulted on over $100 million in loans. The Tennessean reports that attorney Philip Young has since written that a sale in the next 6 months is the only viable option for the company. He also says Uncle Nearest's assets are commingled with other companies owned by its founders, Vaughn and Keith Weaver. Young wants to expand the receivership to include those companies as well. But the Weavers want Young out, arguing the company would fare better with Vaughn Weaver in charge. So far, the judge in the case hasn't made a decision. But on Monday, he noted that receivership is what's currently holding off the company's debt obligations and potentially lawsuits, saying, quote, the wolves at the door would be coming in. Nashville sold a record number of hotel rooms in 2025, 10,244,000. That beats the previous record set 2 years ago by more than 20,000. The Nashville Business Journal reports some of the biggest weekends came alongside events like CMA Fest, the FIFA Club World Cup, Metallica playing Nissan Stadium the same weekend as college graduations, and a weekend where Vanderbilt played against LSU while the Titans played the Patriots. Headed into 2026, the Nashville area ranks 5th for hotel construction, with more than 2,700 additional rooms in the works. The Nashville Symphony has a new maestro for a little while. After last year's departure of Giancarlo Guerrero, who you may have seen conducting during Bad Bunny's Super Bowl halftime show, the symphony has been searching for a new leader. And they promoted 6-time Grammy Award-winning composer Leonard Slatkin to the role of music director for the next 3 years. Slatkin is well known to the Nashville Symphony. He worked as a music advisor when the Schermerhorn opened 20 years ago and has again been music advisor for the past year. He'll take the helm in August and conduct 14 classical series concerts this season. He'll also provide artistic leadership and strategy around the symphony's education and community engagement efforts, some of which he talked about recently on This Is Nashville.
One of the things we're going to try to do over the next few years here in Nashville is make the orchestra an integral part of the younger audience as well. Bring them along. Let them understand that the music we play is special, but it's also for everybody.
Slatkin's promotion also satisfies certain contractual obligations with the Musicians Union. The symphony can now hire new players as needed during his tenure, which will be for the next 3 seasons. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. In 2023, the state passed a law that would slash the size of Nashville's 40-member Metro Council in half. But that hasn't actually happened yet because of the ensuing legal battle between the city and the state. That battle culminates with arguments at the Tennessee Supreme Court this morning. To talk about this case and what an adversarial decision would mean for Nashville, WPLN Metro reporter Cynthia Abrams spoke with news director Tony Gonzalez.
Cindy, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So take us back. What happened during that 2023 legislative session, and why are we still talking about it here in 2026?
Yes. So the year that the Tennessee General Assembly passed this bill, tensions between the state and Nashville had really reached a boiling point. This bill was one of many that restricted Nashville's right to self-governance. There were bills that handed over control of local boards to the state, restricted the types of building codes that the city can enact, among others. These bills were viewed by some as a form of political retaliation, Remember that the state legislature is a Republican supermajority, while Nashville's local government is pretty left-leaning. And these bills passed not long after Nashville's Metro Council rejected a proposal to host the Republican National Convention. And ultimately, Metro sued over 4 different bills, claiming that these laws singled out Nashville in a way that isn't allowed.
And some of these legal battles are still playing out in the court, years after the passage?
Exactly. When the Metro Council Reduction Act was passed, Nashville was just months away from an election, which obviously was put in a sort of limbo. Would voters be electing 40 Metro Council members or 20? So the city worked quickly. The planning department drew up new just-in-case maps of a 20-member council, and the legal department asked a judge to temporarily block the law. And that was successful. There are still 40 sitting Metro Council members. Metro continued to see success in this case in the lower courts, which found that the law did target Nashville. But this was overturned last June by the Tennessee Court of Appeals. They said that the state law did not target Metro because it limits the size of all local metropolitan councils across Tennessee, and that Nashville just happens to be the only local government that's over the size limit. The city is asking the Tennessee Supreme Court to reverse that ruling.
Okay, and according to the city, what is their, legal argument to overturn it?
From the beginning, Metro has maintained that this law unfairly targets Nashville. They're also arguing that Tennessee's constitution gives metros the power to set their own council size and that only voter ballot measures can change them over time.
Okay, what is the state's reasoning for passing this law in the first place?
Tennessee House Majority Leader William Lamberth, who sponsored the bill in 2023, said that the bill had to do with maximizing efficiency. The council's efficiency is something that has been discussed at length by the council itself. Anyone who has attended a council meeting before might know that they can go on for hours. And the council has made changes in recent years to try to pass simple, procedural, non-controversial things without as much obligatory discussion. But some people, like former state lawmaker, now the city's legislative liaison, Darren Jernigan, have said that while they do want a smaller council for efficiency reasons, they feel that decision is up to Nashville voters, not the state government.
If we look back at history, the size of the council is closely entwined with Metro's consolidation, like the formation of Metro. So why is the 40-member council important to some people?
The city of Nashville and the Davidson County governments were consolidated into one large government in 1962. And it solved a host of issues like financial problems faced by both city and county governments and the overlapping of certain public services. And that's what voters approved, including a concerted effort to include Black representation on the council. So people are really concerned about what a 20-person council could mean for representation. Right now, we have a pretty diverse council. It's majority female, and the demographics are largely representative of Nashville's racial makeup. But a smaller council could risk that. It could also mean with more candidates vying for fewer spots, more expensive election campaigns, which could be a barrier for lower-income residents trying to enter public office.
So if the Supreme Court does rule in favor of the state and the Metro Council is limited to 20 members, what would that mean for everyday Nashvillians?
We've got an election coming up in 2027, and the council would be forced to shrink itself ahead of those elections. The city's planning department would need to revisit the redrawn council districts they drafted pretty quickly back in 2023. And we know some council members are worried about this outcome and would like to start those preparations. And while some of those preemption bills that were passed in 2023 deal with things that most Nashvillians aren't coming face to face with every day, like who controls the airport authority, the Metro Council Reduction Act could have a big impact on all Nashvillians' representation.
Well, thanks, Cindy, for explaining today. To learn more about this case, stay tuned at WPLN.org, where we will be following this hearing at the Supreme Court and the eventual ruling when it comes down.
Thanks for listening to the Nash Villager podcast. We take this look at Nashville news every weekday. If you like it, go ahead and subscribe on your favorite podcasting app and tell a friend or give us a mention on your socials. It really helps get the word out. And of course, everything at WPLN News is listener supported. You can become a member at WPLN.org. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. I'll be taking some personal time over the next week, so the next few episodes will be a mix of me and my colleagues. But in the meantime, let's make this day a good one. And we'll catch back up soon.